Welcome to SB&M is Here, the State Bar of New Mexico's official podcast. In this series, we'll discuss topics such as professional development, tools of the legal trade, and mental and professional well-being. Connecting the legal community across New Mexico, SB&M is here. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to SB&M is Here. I am very thankful that with this episode, we will continue our Season 2 goal of hearing more from the New Mexico judiciary. We were incredibly thankful to steal some time from Judge Slyvia LaMar of the First Judicial District Court. Tune in as the family law section chats with the judge about what the court is dealing with most frequently now, things like spousal support, and even learn a little bit more about the judge herself. So Amber, feel free to take it away.
Thank you, Morgan. And hello, State Bar of New Mexico. My name is Amber Macias, Mayo. I practice law throughout our great state, and I'm your host for this podcast. Today, I have the honor of speaking with Senior Family Law District Judge Sylvia LaMar from the First Judicial District Court for New Mexico. Good afternoon, Judge LaMar.
Good afternoon, Amber, and thank you everyone for inviting me. Hello, everyone throughout the state who's listening to us.
It is our pleasure, Judge. So let's start by talking about what the court is dealing with most frequently right now. What are the issues that you are seeing in your court most frequently at the time?
What we see more than anything else are custody disputes. Custody disputes and an increase in kinship guardianship cases as well. I think both of those are driven by the high rate of substance use disorders here in northern New Mexico, as well as the poverty and the intimate partner violence that affects the families and certainly the children.
I see. Do you believe that the best interest of the Do you believe best interest of the child standard is vague and that may be causing so much litigation in custody?
Amber, this podcast is geared to lawyers. Most of our docket, however, is pro se.
Yes. And
pro ses have no idea what anyone means when we say child standard, best interest. A parent is there fighting for essentially their life, fighting for their child or their grandparent or auntie. So we have a very different idea of what's important as an attorney or a judge than many of the pro ses. The pro ses want their children back, and that's what many of the motions are titled. I want my child back. And we set up for hearing.
Wow. Well, that's a really good point that you make, Judge, that what we as practitioners are looking at is much different than what pro se individuals are trying to achieve. So do you approach those cases with pro se parties differently than you approach the cases with attorneys?
That's a very good question, Amber. We have to hold pro ses to the same standard as an attorney. That said, it's just not possible to do that because just as many attorneys don't know the rules of evidence and what is and is not hearsay, a pro se certainly does not. So things come in all the time. As a side note, I want you to know that before we began recording, I went through 2 weeks of cases, and I saw that out of 2 weeks of hearings, I had 35 that were pro se. I had 6 that were 2 attorneys, and that's, I think, a high number because I had a trial that was set on multiple days. And then I had 9 cases where there was 1 attorney. If that gives you an idea of the numbers. Most of our cases are pro se, and sometimes 3 pro ses, such as kinship guardianship cases, where we've got the grandparents and then we have mother and father as separate respondents.
Wow. Is there anything that we as practitioners can do to assist the court in this situation where there are so many pro se litigants?
That too is a good question. let me think about that. Yes, you can talk to your clients and counsel them in these custody cases that they have to look at what their child needs. And they need to stop looking at the failed relationship, because that's what we see. Well, he did this, she did that, she was unfaithful. 5 years ago, he was drinking, and I stopped 6 years ago. We have to make our decisions on what's best for these children. And if we can get that message across, and if the attorneys can not only talk to their clients, but also have that dialogue with the pro se parent on the other side. And I know that's a difficult line, and some attorneys don't like to talk to pro ses, but I'm going to suggest to you that as long as you make it clear that you do not represent them and you do not represent the child, that talking to them can just be one more option or one more chance to informally determine what's best for this child right now.
Okay. Do you, Your Honor, do you believe that the current pandemic is to blame for the frequency of custody cases that you're seeing?
Not at all. I don't think there's been any uptick in custody cases. The DV cases have ebbed and flowed a bit more during the last year, but we have these same issues year in and year out.
Fair enough. And I can say that a good number of calls I receive are about custody, and that they are never easy cases. All right, Your Honor, give us a fun fact about yourself. What do you like to do for fun?
I cook, I work out, and I love to scroll through recipes.
What's the last recipe that you found and liked?
Ooh. A friend of mine, a retired attorney, recently gave me a recipe on a peanut noodle salad, an Asian salad, and it's absolutely delicious. You can add anything you want to it.
That sounds fantastic. Let's take a break and see if we can't get some of that while we're on break. All right, we are back now. We are still talking with Judge Sylvia LaMar from the First Judicial District Court. We just had a discussion about the most frequently litigated issue that Judge LaMar sees is that of custody. And I asked whether the pandemic was to blame for any of that, and Judge LaMar confirms that that is not what's to blame. But when we talk about the pandemic, we know that COVID has changed the world, and not the least of which the court. And early on, the court was called upon to assist with disputes that were related to quarantining, where a child should be if a parent was exposed, who should care for an exposed child, and etc. And the court seems to have given us quite a bit of guidance on that. But now, new issues are presenting themselves with regard to COVID. So, Your Honor, when the vaccine becomes available for children, how will the court address disputes between parents regarding receiving vaccination? And how does the United States Supreme Court case Jacobson versus State of Massachusetts provide guidance to the court on that issue?
Turning to that case first, Amber, I think that case is over 100 years old, but it's still good law. If a vaccine is mandatory, you have to get it. If a vaccine is mandatory for your child, for their admission to school, for their admission to a program that both parents agree to, that child gets vaccinated. The more difficult question is just like the questions a few months ago about children traveling or children re-entering school. What happens when we have joint legal custody and a discretionary vaccine? Well, first off, I can say probably on behalf of every judge, we hope the parents will reach a decision. Talking to their pediatrician, talking to their priest, talking to their rabbi, their parents. It's not a decision we should be making as judges. If we have to make it, it's going to be like any other decision, such as a school reentry. What are the pros and cons that each parent is presenting to us? Are there elderly relatives in the household? Is there a grandmother who's 85 with emphysema? A grandfather who's got heart disease and diabetes? Are there children that have severe allergies or asthma or a compromised immune system? Those will all factor in. So there is no checklist that we're going to have. It's going to be a case-by-case decision based on what the parents present to us.
And you are making very clear right now, it's a case-by-case decision that you hope the court will not be called to make.
Correct.
Yes. And it is true, Jacobson versus Massachusetts, it's over 100 years old, but were you as taken as I when you read it, how relevant it is to what's going on today?
Absolutely. All you have to do is change a few words in that case, and we're right back here with
Yes.
COVID instead of smallpox, right?
Right. It's incredible. All right. We have another fun quiz, Your Honor. What is your favorite local restaurant and why?
I'm going to start that answer by saying my husband and I have not eaten out at a restaurant or even gotten takeout food in over a year.
Oh, my goodness.
If we were going to a restaurant tomorrow, I would choose Midtown Bistro. It's a local restaurant. The food is fantastic and it's beautiful. I like pretty things, and that restaurant is so pretty. Have you been there?
I have. I agree with you that it is very pretty, although I was there on a winter day and had a fantastic soup that was fitting for a nice winter day.
Well, they have a beautiful patio as well. And I think we'll go there soon.
I hope you get there soon. I hope to be there soon myself. All right, we'll be back after this break. Welcome back. We are still here with Judge Sylvia LaMar. We're having a great time talking about the things that Judge LaMar likes to do in her free time and her favorite restaurant. But Judge, let's get back to a couple serious topics. One of them is that of spousal support. So spousal support is a topic that's discussed among practitioners quite often. Attorneys in our state are concerned that there doesn't seem to be a uniform way to address spousal support, and that clients are paying an enormous amount to make spousal support non-modifiable. Do you have any suggestions for how to make the approach more uniform throughout our state?
Amber, we have a spousal support statute. And I can tell you in the first, what we do is look at the factors that that statute directs us to look at. When you are presenting a spousal support case, to me, the most important thing you can do is go through those factors, because that's what I'm going to do in my decision. I'm going to say, husband is 56, wife is 54. Husband is in good health, wife is in poor health. Then I'm going to go through the next factor, the current and future earnings. Then I'm going to go through their ability or efforts made to obtain employment and maintain employment, and so on, just through the statute. And when attorneys present a case to us, going through the statutory factors, that's a well-presented, well-prepared case and an attorney who is doing their job. And it allows us to make the decision.
Okay, so you mentioned one of the factors being the ability to work, of course, we're aware of, but how would you approach spousal support given the decision in Lovato versus Lovato regarding the duty to become self-supporting, for example?
I look at the factors that I'm supposed to look at. Do we have a spouse, and let's just say it's the wife, because usually it is, who has not been out in the workforce for 30 years? If so, her ability to work is going to be very limited. And that's what so many of the cases are. Someone who hasn't worked for 1 or 2 or 3 decades. That person, we're going to most likely have spousal support indefinitely in place. And that's very different from a 40 or 50 or 60-year-old spouse that has education, that has job skills, that has her health. I think it's up to the attorney who is representing the husband in the case, for example, to ask those questions. What have you done to prepare yourself for work? What about education? What do you want to be? I mean, an attorney who's representing the wife will often present, this is what my client wants to do through her testimony. I want to go back to school and obtain my nursing degree. This is how long it will take. This is what it will cost. And that information is incredibly helpful to us in coming up with a rehabilitative spousal support order.
Okay. Now, interestingly, Judge, I didn't hear you say anything about the spousal support guidelines. And, although the guidelines are clear, they're supposed to be used for settlement only, they are being used to guide the court in some instances. Do you use the spousal support guidelines in your court?
Are you talking about the worksheet that's in the statute?
Yes, I'm talking about the guidelines, the worksheet that was provided for us in the commentary of the guidelines.
At the First Judicial District Court, we don't use it at all. I think the commentary is very clear. The worksheet is to be used during settlement negotiation. I don't use it, and I will not accept testimony regarding the worksheet.
Okay, so if after somebody has gone through the elements, what do you need as the court making the decision, what do you need to help determine an appropriate amount and not just whether somebody's meeting the elements?
The factors that the statute lays out actually helps us with that because we can see what the spouses were used to. We can recognize that now we have one income to support 2 people. And is that a long marriage? Is that a shorter marriage? Is there income producing property to assist one or both? Is there another means of support to assist one or both? All of those will make a difference.
Thank you. Thank you for that guidance, Your Honor. I think that's going to be helpful to many. All right, one final fun quiz. If money was absolutely no object, think big, what would you be doing?
Amber, I love my job. I'm blessed to be a district court judge over a family law docket. And if money was absolutely no object, I would be doing something to help kids. I would be volunteering for children. I would be working with parents who have substance use and mental health disorders so that they can return to being a parent in some form. I would be making sure that the kids have what they need to grow up safe and secure. If money was truly no object, like you're saying I had millions of dollars, I would set up a foundation to work with the families. And I would be there working it every single day.
Wow, that's excellent, Judge. Thank you. We'll be back after this break. All right, we are back now with our ending remarks. Judge, I think you've heard the phrase, "it's lonely at the top." How does being a judge affect your relationships, not just with your family and friends, but with the community as well?
You know, Amber, I want to say first, you come up with the most interesting questions. Being a judge means that you don't go out to lunch with the attorneys that you've gone out to lunch with for 10 or 20 years, unless there's someone who practices criminal law or estate law or someone who's not in your courtroom. Being a judge means you look at every invitation that you get. And if it's a small gathering, you might ask the host who's going to be there, because you don't want to run into someone who's been in your court, either as a litigant or an attorney. Being a judge means you watch what you do when you are out. I think for the first 6 or 7 years I was a judge, I never had a glass of wine at a restaurant. I always had a glass of water or a bottle of water. And retired Chief Justice Petra Macias told me that when I was campaigning. She said, "Sylvia, you always have a bottle of water in your hand, not a glass, because that could be vodka. You have a bottle of water wherever you go." And I've kept that with me. The flip side too, or another part of being a judge, is being out in the community. The cases that I gave you, for example, those numbers, which were, I don't know, close to 50 cases, that was over a 2-week period of time. So if we had 50 cases over 2 weeks, that's maybe 110, 120 people, depending on how many parties there are. So I go into the community, people recognize me as the judge who did them right or didn't understand them and screwed up their life. And I certainly don't recognize them. And that happens in Santa Fe. That's happened to me at a pharmacy, getting medication from someone who said, "Oh, you're my judge, and I get to see my kids tomorrow for 2 hours." She was excited about that. So I knew, okay, she's got a mental health or substance abuse problem because she's excited about seeing her kids for 2 hours. I didn't recognize her. I go to my doctor and there's a woman taking my blood pressure with a name tag, and it's a very unusual first name. Well, she had been in my court. That one, I'm not going to change my doctor. I did change my pharmacy, though. And let me give you an example of one of the more uncomfortable situations. My husband was home to meet someone who was coming to repair our dishwasher. I still have some campaign signs from 8 years ago, and we use them for yard cleanup and poster board for our grandkids. And there was one that was in the garage that he saw, and he said to my husband, "Is that your wife? She was my judge." My husband didn't remember the guy's last name, only his first name, but I got him to find out the name. I looked the guy up, and not only had he been in my courtroom, but he was one of the few respondents in a DV case where I took away his firearms and required him to turn them over to law enforcement. And he was in my kitchen.
He's in your home.
Yeah. So that's just something that, you might not think about when you are contemplating being a judge. Things are very different, but you get new friends too. You have your neighborhood, you have your gym, you have your family. It's just wonderful being a judge. It's just as you said, it can be a little lonely at the top. I really don't find it lonely.
Good.
I find my life incredibly blessed.
Good. I'm glad that's not affecting you in that way. But, Your Honor, I've heard you mention when you're answering a couple of the questions today, I can hear the passion about children in your answers and in your voice. And so the last question I have for you is, do you have personal experiences that help shape your decisions that you're making every day? And if so, what are they?
Absolutely, Amber. I look to my parents and their experiences in life. But more importantly, I look at my adult children and now my grandchildren. I have with all of them seen a combination of teenage pregnancy, substance abuse, mental health issues, and now being a grandmother, and how important it is to me to be a grandmother, and how important it is to my grandchildren. But also with that, comes a very scary recognition that under New Mexico law, if my daughter and the father of my grandchildren suddenly decided that they didn't want me meddling in their kids' lives, well, guess what? I have no rights to see my grandchildren. So I think about that sometimes, and I can really see the pain on some of these grandparents' faces when I'm denying a kinship guardianship request or denying a grandparent visitation request because the statutory requirements have not been met. So yes, does my personal life give me experience that I hope help me make good decisions? Absolutely. Before we go, Amber, I have a question for you.
Okay.
Tell me something fun about Amber Macias Mayo. All right?
Something fun about me. Well, I think
we don't know.
Okay. I think I'm fun all around, but for those who may dispute that, something fun about me that usually takes people aback if they don't know me is that I love heavy metal and classic rock. It is not my generation. I didn't get to see a lot of the wonderful bands that I follow now because they're done and gone, or lost members or whatever the situation is. But if money were no object for me and I could twinkle my nose and make something happen, I would cause a Led Zeppelin reunion and I would be front and center at that concert.
Fantastic.
Thank you for asking me that. Thank you.
I went to a Led Zeppelin concert when I was in high school.
Dream. It's a dream. Your Honor, this has been fun. I thank you for your time. I thank you for your thoughtful responses. And I hope everyone else enjoys this as much as you and I have.
I sure have enjoyed this, Amber. Thank you so much for setting this up, for making it happen. And it's been wonderful getting to know you a little bit better as well.
The same, Your Honor. Thank you all. Goodbye.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening. This episode was produced by the State Bar of New Mexico's Member Services Department and Family Law Section. All editing and sound mixing was done by Blue Sky eLearn. Intro music is by Kevin McLeod at Incomptech. The viewers of the presenters are that of their own and are not endorsed by the State Bar of New Mexico. Nothing said in this podcast is legal advice for you.